My name is Ryan Snelling, and welcome to my Watch Diary. So happy to be here as always. I start off every podcast by saying that I'm happy to be here. I'm so stoked to be here. This time, it's true. All the other times, no, I was faking it. No, this time, it's the truth. Kidding, obviously. I'm always happy to be here, but there's a new element to this whole thing, and I'm excited. Yesterday, I was scared. I was terrified and weary, didn't think I was going to be able to pull off what I'm pulling off right this second. If you're listening to this on the Watch Diary podcast feed, thank you. But there's a new component right now. I'm on video. I'm being filmed, guys. If you're listening to this right now, I'm being filmed. And it's going up on the Rewatch Ryan YouTube channel. That's right. Watch Diary had a YouTube channel, and I don't know if you could call it the video component because it was still like just the audio, but with a thumb. But the podcast has been going to a YouTube channel called Watch Diary, and it used to be Sight and Sound. I've rebranded that whole thing. So the YouTube channel is now Rewatch Ryan, and there's a link to it in the description of this podcast feed. So if you want right now, open your Spotify, open your Apple Podcast, open this episode up, find that YouTube link, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you are at home, just sitting on the couch, and you want to watch the Watch Diary podcast, then you can. You can stop the podcast right this second and go to the YouTube channel and check it out. It's really weird. Really weird because I'm playing to the camera right now. I'm talking, and I started this podcast the way that I normally start it. My name's Ryan Snelling. Welcome to my Watch Diary. But now I'm playing for the camera, and it's very odd to me and very distracting. I know how hard it is to act. Now I know how hard it is to act because you got to do this whole thing and have this camera awareness. Actors aren't trying to look at the camera. I'm trying so hard to look at the camera. All of my energy is going into staring at you through this lens, and it's crazy. I'm not used to it at all. Like, I was doing a couple of test videos yesterday, testing all the lights and everything that I got going on here. And watching myself on playback, I realized how animated I've been and how much I look around when nobody's watching me. It's weird. And I don't know, I don't know. I've done YouTube channel I've done YouTube channels, but I've done YouTube videos before, and honestly, it's kind of been a pain in the ass. But at first I thought it was the editing part of it, but I realized it was literally just the performance of it. And much respect to people like Austin Burke who kind of have this stuff down and know exactly how, because I'm sure he's kind of like come down to where he like knows exactly what he's gonna do, how he says everything, and how he's also probably working towards his like edit and post-production while he's making the video. Maybe he's not. Maybe he just does whatever he wants and then figures it out in post later. But I feel like you have to have some awareness of like what you're gonna be doing in post, and that's what makes people like him so impressive to me. But YouTube videos, especially because I would do like quick cut stuff, and I would think about my point before I said it, and I would do like, you don't think about it, but I would do like 10 takes per point, or even per sentence. Honestly, it was exhausting. It's really hard. It's really hard to do, and you don't think about it. At least in this way, like, I'm still speaking in a colloquial manner. I'm speaking like I would on a podcast, and I'm not worried about so much cutting or anything. I just have to focus on this. But and I think it's better, but I'm out of practice. This is better than producing a quick cut movie review, and I definitely like it. And what I'm doing right now, it's the kind of thing that I've been watching FlickPig do for a while now. But he has things at his advantage that I don't have, but I hope to work towards. The FlickPig, he does his live streams and he just answers viewer questions, and he has a fan base and a loyal fan base that allows him to do that, which is amazing. And I hope to get to that point, but Right now, I'm just live streaming my podcast, and we'll see how it goes. If you, the first thing you probably, before you found out about all of this, you saw that I'm talking about a film called 3 Days to Kill. And you probably thought of two things. Why this movie? And, no, why this movie, or what is this movie? Because, I was thinking about it. I might be the first person to have rented 3 Days to Kill on Vudu this year. That would be amazing. We hear all the time Netflix and Disney Plus releasing all these stats that, The Adam Project is the fourth highest viewed movie of all, or the most rewatched Netflix movie, whatever it is, whatever the stat is. You hear about that stuff all the time. But I would love to be able to access stats on how poorly viewed movies are. Every now and then, like there's a box office blunder that becomes famous. The movie that's either performed worse at the box office in a certain year or whatever. That stuff is fascinating to me, but I would love to just be able to look up how many people rented 3 Days to Kill on Vudu in the year of 2022. That would be so fun. So fun. And it would also help me measure how great a film is. Something that I talk about and other people talk about is greatness, and rewatchability I think is definitely a huge factor when it comes to how great a film is, what this film's legacy is. And 3 Days to Kill is a movie that I feel like has no legacy whatsoever, and that's what's so fascinating about it. And so yeah, I really haven't answered the why yet, but 3 Days to Kill, if you don't know, is a 2014 movie directed by Mick G, written by Luc Besson, starring Kevin Costner, Haley Steinfeld, and unfortunately it stars Amber Heard, and I didn't really have the foresight or the memory even to remember that she was in this movie. It's so poorly timed because there's all that Johnny Depp, Amber Heard stuff going on literally right now, like literally the week that I'm recording this is their trial. But that's okay because she sucks in the movie. I am choosing to talk about this movie because I do treat this podcast as sort of like a test. Not that it's not going to be released. This podcast was definitely released. You're listening to it or you're watching it, but it's a test for my equipment. It's a test for how I want to speak and how I want to format what we're going to do here on Watch Diary and on Rewatch Ryan moving forward. So this is literally the first time I've recorded a podcast with this setup, and I figured that 3 Days to Kill is the perfect movie, ceremoniously, for this reason. So to give you context and to give you backstory, 3 Days to Kill was the very first movie I ever reviewed, ever, on a podcast. My very first podcast was called Film Beef, and unfortunately the feed's not up anymore. I took it down because I was just tired of paying for hosting, and there's all like a whole other backstory to that, which I wasn't really going to go into, but maybe a little bit. 3 Days to Kill was the very first podcast that myself and my co-host at the time, Phil Wilson, reviewed on a podcast. And even in 2014, it was a random movie to pick. We started, I think, in October of that year, and 3 Days to Kill came out, I think it was, does it say? It's 2014. Let me check real quick. I probably should have pulled this up. I'm also not going to look too hard into this because it doesn't really matter. February 21st. Okay. So it had been out for several months at the time that we chose to record this. We chose to do it on a week that I don't think really had like a big release, but we also wanted a test version. And I didn't have all this stuff in 2014. In fact, I had an HP laptop, and if my memory serves correctly, I podcasted speaking into the laptop, and I think Phil recorded on a headset at his house, like a gaming headset, if I remember correctly. And we recorded a Google Hangout call, and I used the audio from that. So not only was the audio bad in general because it was just stripped from a Hangout call, but my mic, it was a laptop mic. Shame on me. Like, I'm pretty sure I had the worst mic in this situation, which is unlike me because I care very much about how this all sounds. But it was also just like a test, you know? It was about like, hey, how do we podcast? How do we have chemistry? How do we format the show? It was everything. 3 Days to Kill was the movie that we didn't care enough about to like really have it all figured out. It was just something that was supposed to be fun and forgettable. And I'm not even sure that I knew that I was going to release it, but I ended up releasing it. I wish I had listened to it. I do have the file, and maybe I'll put it up on the Watch Diary podcast feed. Maybe. I'm sure it sounds like shit. But it might be fun. I haven't listened to it, and I didn't know how I felt about listening to it because I knew that my my podcast perfectionist mind would probably go crazy. But also, I just have like mixed feelings in general about that whole era. Even though like I definitely wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Film Beef era, and I obviously wouldn't be talking about this movie for the second time in my life if it wasn't for Film Beef. But yeah, I haven't gone back to listen to it yet. Maybe I will. Maybe now's the time to sort of revisit all that kind of stuff. I'm talking like this happened like 30 years ago. But it's 8 years. I've almost been podcasting for 8 years. So yeah. So it just kind of felt ceremonious to talk about 3 Days to Kill on this little trial thing that I'm doing here because I did it 8 years ago when I was starting podcasting. So another funny thing too is I remembered the things that I remembered rewatching this movie were like a lot of things stuck out, and I remember it because I remember making fun of it. Me and Phil talked so much shit and had so much fun just laughing at how bad this movie is. It's so bad. It's so bad. But like it's almost not in a fun way because the movie's trying to take itself serious. It doesn't know what it is or what it wants to be at any given moment. But I'm laughing at honestly the filmmaking is the stuff that I ripped apart the most. It wasn't even the narrative because I gave up on the narrative and I gave up on the story, and it's just like so run of the mill and like so easy. It's so easy that I could have written this movie honestly without knowing how like any like secret agency logistics work whatsoever or spy logistics work whatsoever. But it's the filmmaking that I was shitting on. And Mick G, I don't know a whole lot about Mick G. His name is Mick G. So whenever I see his name show up in credits, I'm like, oh, okay. But he's not somebody that has any sort of clout in my mind. You know, he was a former music video director. The thing that I think of the most when I think of Mick G is the Terminator Salvation movie, which like I actually don't mind. It's the aesthetic of it is actually kind of cool. If you want to get into what it means to the Terminator franchise, then we could I don't know, probably light a fire and start some arguments, but I didn't mind it. It's certainly the thing that I didn't mind the most of all the stuff that I've seen of Mick G. I actually appreciate some of the stuff that in Terminator Salvation that he does. But overall, he's not someone that has any clout or gives me any sort of excitement or whatever. I think the thing that I was thinking about going into this movie, 2014, it was a few years after Taken, and I was sort of just down for this type of movie. This is where we kind of started to make 60-year-olds our action stars. And they kind of make Kevin Costner look like Liam Neeson in this movie a little bit, but there's like just such obvious things like this wants to be Taken. But what's weird about it is it's almost not a copycat movie because it's written by Luc Besson, who, if I remember correctly, he either wrote Taken or directed Taken or both. And I can't remember exactly. Let me pull it up real quick. Also, shout out to Mick G for being a part of the OC. I forgot that he was a part of the OC, the TV show, which I actually like for the most part. Did he write or direct Taken? He did not direct Taken. Sorry, but I'm pretty sure he wrote Taken. Real quick, 2009 is when that came out. Written by, 2008. He wrote Taken. So it's almost like not even a copycat movie because it came from the same writer. So this is just his thing. But this movie wants to be taken so hard because it takes place in Paris. It's a, has elements of like an estranged father because he was a secret agent. He's got to make it up to his wife. He's got to rebuild his relation, prove to his daughter and wife that he can be there for them while also juggling this agent, this one last mission, the whole idea. It's very, very similar. Very similar. And 100% not as good. Falls short so hard. But yeah, what I will say is that I had a lot more fun watching it with somebody in 2014 than I did watching it by myself. It was definitely fun to kind of like reminisce. This is a movie that's fun to watch with like your buddies that are also into movies and just want to make fun of something. But yeah, it was fun, but also kind of annoyed me even more than it did back in the day. It it's a weird movie to talk about too, because I could just like make fun of it, and it's not going to be a lengthy review because there's no way in hell that you're watching this movie for this podcast. Maybe you watch it afterwards out of curiosity. Maybe you just kind of like put it on just to see what I'm talking about, but it's not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not foolish enough to think that you've seen this movie already or that you're going to watch it because I talked about it on a podcast. So I'm just going to kind of breeze through it and then we'll call it a day. But it's I felt the length of this movie, and I remember, like I said, having a good time, and it's like 2 hours, and it doesn't warrant it whatsoever because minimal, at the least, this movie could have shed 30 minutes and just spared us all. It kind of felt wrong that this was 2 hours when it should have been an hour 30, hour 40, just based on the quality, based on the premise. Like, there's not a whole lot going on at really any point. And even the stuff that they do add in kind of doesn't amount to anything, including the fact that there's a squatting African family. And when we start the movie, when his name is Ethan Renner, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But when Kevin Costner goes back to his apartment for the first time, there's a squatting African family there. And they say it in the movie, and I had subtitles on. I don't know if I remember this or not when I watched it the first time, but there's like laws against kicking squatters out of your house. So it's like, I think it's supposed to be like comedic, and it's one of the issues of the movie where this movie never knows what it wants to be at any given moment. Every scene belongs in a different movie than the scene before. Every character belongs in a different movie than the character seen before, introduced before. And it's kind of weird. And it's supposed to be funny, but also just doesn't matter at all. And it doesn't amount to anything, and it doesn't mean anything. And they could have taken it out and it would have been just fine. In fact, it would have been better just because we would have gotten in, gotten out, and that would have been the end of it. But I went straight to the squatting African family. There's so much more to talk about. So let's talk about how Kevin Costner's name is Ethan Renner. And it was even more fascinating because, Haley Steinfeld plays his daughter in this movie, and she's really the only thing that works in this movie. But, she was in Hawkeye with Jeremy Renner, and I just love the idea that, this character, Ethan Renner, it's such a name that you just come up with for a spy movie. Like Ethan Renner, when I hear that name, I'm like, that's such a name that a screenwriter comes up with for a spy movie. It's half Ethan Hunt, half one of the hottest actors at the time, Jeremy Renner. They have Ethan Renner at the beginning. They open with him, and I guess like it's his last mission. I can't really remember exactly I think it's his like last intended mission. Or no, I'm sorry. It's his last mission until he finds out he has a terminal disease. That's what it is. So he's a secret agent. And actually, let me backtrack even more. The opening of this movie, the very first scene is Amber Heard, who I can't even remember her name. Viv, I think. Vivian DeLay is her name. The very opening of the movie is Amber Heard walks up to two government guys, and they brief her on a mission. So right away, this movie wants to be so fucking cool because the people that she's after are the wolf and the albino. And if I remember correctly, the albino is a henchman for the wolf, and they're terrorists, I guess. I can't really remember. But the albino is the henchman that, and we're not really aware of this at the time in the opening scene, but the albino is like Kevin Costner's mission. So they're briefing Amber Heard on going after the wolf, which is like the main guy. Okay. So right away, they set up the two cool bad guys, but they say that her main mission is the main bad guy, which is a little bit confusing because Kevin Costner's the lead in the movie and he could have just been going after the big guy the whole time. And I can't really remember the reason that the movie gave that this was what was happening, but they're like not even working together. That's what's weird. They brief Amber Heard and they want her to do this over here and take care of the wolf, but she's not working with Kevin Costner, who's an American secret agent, to take down both guys. It's like very weird. They stay separate, but for no reason. So, and it also, proves to just be a faulty premise because the opening action scene where Kevin Costner interacts with both characters, he fails to take out the albino. So the albino and the wolf get away because the CIA didn't know how to coordinate this attack. And it's really stupid. And it's not the movie saying the CIA was, flawed. It's the screenwriting. It's the writing in it. So that's when we find out the reason that the whole thing was botched is because Kevin Costner finds out he has a disease. He had brain cancer and it spread to his lungs, I believe, and he's going to die in a few months. So because this mission got botched, it's incomplete, and Amber Heard needs to grab Kevin Costner to finish what they started. But he's terminal, and now he's thinking about his life before he dies, and he goes back to meet his estranged wife and meet his estranged daughter, who he doesn't have a relationship with, and he wants to make it right and get his affairs in order before he dies. But Amber Heard, she really needs him to take out the wolf and the albino. So the whole movie is this juggling act. And the thing right away that doesn't work in the filmmaking, and the reason why we're not connecting, I think one of the reasons why I haven't really connected to anything at this point, other than it starts off so damn stupid, is that the filmmaking is piss poor in this movie. Like, you can walk away from the movie saying, like, the action's never even really great. As a music video director, you expect, like, scenes, clubbing scenes, and you expect action to at least look pretty cosmetically, maybe not be the greatest thing you've ever, but at least like passable, and none of it is. But right away, the editing, going all the way back to the opening scene where the two agency guys brief Amber Heard, it introduces this thing that McG does throughout the entire movie where he edits away from characters that are speaking. And this isn't a technique that I'm unfamiliar with, but the reason why it doesn't work is because, and at least we're introduced to the two characters that don't mean anything. Like, the two agency guys are never seen or heard from again after this scene. So it's not really a big deal to me, but it's a trend throughout the entire movie where McG just cuts away or doesn't show the actors that are speaking in a very obvious way. Like, it's an editing choice. And it's fine, I guess, at the beginning because we're just trying to get introduced to Amber Heard. But information is also like being given about the movie, and we're not really connected to the words. Like, this is where we find out what the wolf and the albino are actually doing and why they're in trouble and why we have to take them out. It's the setup for the entire thing, and I'm already disconnected. Especially when Amber Heard, she turns out to just be a nothing character. Like, she's not, and I'm not just saying this because Amber Heard is questionable as an actress, but nothing about Vivian or Amber Heard is good in this movie. So right away, we're disconnected from all of it. And there's a couple of other moments too where McG does this. There's like scenes that are meant to be heartfelt, and it's when Kevin Costner and Connie Britton, right, plays the wife. Connie Nielsen. I always get Connie Nielsen and Connie Britton mixed up. Connie Nielsen from Wonder Woman. She plays Haley Steinfeld's mom. And so they meet, they go to the school when Haley Steinfeld gets out to basically reintroduce Haley Steinfeld to Kevin Costner. They know each other, but they haven't been around each other for years. And so there's this like heartfelt scene where it's supposed to also just kind of be angry and emotional. And they don't show Connie Nielsen really at all in the entire scene, but the characters are interacting with her. So it's supposed to be heartfelt and emotional and like be this like crazy like introduction to these two characters. And the whole time, like Haley Steinfeld's like, "Mom, don't cry, like blah blah blah," and she's not even shown in the scene really. Like it's edited away in a way that we're not even seeing how emotional it's supposed to be for this mother, and it's really silly, you know. So and there's another time too, like this technique. I understand if it's in a almost like in a montage sense, and they do it later, it still doesn't quite work, but you can edit away from your characters or have lines of dialogue over scenes where the characters aren't speaking if there's like a passage of time or if there's like a montage, right? Later on in the movie, there's a scene where Kevin Costner's finally teaching Haley Steinfeld how to ride a bike. And it's a whole bunch of cuts and different moments of him teaching her how to ride a bike, spliced with scenes where they're sort of like having this moment together, like, "Hey, why did you leave me? Blah, 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 blah." And a lot of the dialogue between the scenes is laid depending on what the shot is. So there's a passage of time, there's a montage, there's a lot of bad dubbing, but it makes sense in that way, but not when we're trying to make an emotional connection right then and there in a scene and feel the weight of it. So honestly, the editing and the direction from Mick G is pretty god awful when it comes to that. A lot of the action sequences don't really work or visually make sense either. So yeah, that's just how the whole movie is. It's not even parts of it. It's the whole thing. When it comes to lines of dialogue and dubbing, it's some of the worst dubbing I've ever seen in any movie. I mean, I can even see it in like Marvel movies where they mess up lines or change lines, and it's a part of filmmaking, and I get it. Actors have to go back in and ADR lines. But I mean, there were times when Kevin Costner's mouth wasn't moving at all, and they would force another line into the scene, and it literally was so fucking funny to me. Or Amber Heard would just say something completely different than what her mouth read, and it was incredible. Like, it's one of the worst, maybe the worst example of it I've ever seen in my history of watching movies. It's fantastic. If you haven't picked up on it yet, this is like below, you know how like Liam Neeson makes knockoff Liam Neeson movies at this point? This is 100% below that. Just to kind of wrap up Amber Heard's character, she's the secret agent, and every time we see her, she's in a club with like LED lights and neon lights, and she's got a different outfit on, like Alias style. She's got a different wig, a different outfit, but we never really see her do anything. She never actually participates in the story, almost to a point where like it's faulty, because why rely on this dying guy to do it when it's your fault that it messed up in the first place? Like, the oversight, the agency oversight and everything just completely goes out the window. So you really just, it makes no sense, the whole thing. It falls apart. So I can't even tell you why this movie is called 3 Days to Kill. They say something about it. I had subtitles on. I can't even tell you why it's called 3 Days to Kill. Like, he has a terminal illness, but he has like 3 to 5 months. I think they might have suggested that like they're leaving the country in like 3 days, but that doesn't really mean anything, because they could just go to wherever they are, and it would just become a globe-trotting movie. So I don't really know why there were 3 days to kill. They don't really talk about it, but sorry, I just sniffed there. Let me take a drink of my cold brew. So the reason why Kevin Costner is able to do this whole thing and to live throughout the movie is that Amber Heard entices him with this experimental drug that she can get him. And when she hands him the case with the syringe, he opens it up, and it's like it looks like one of those like play school or just what any kid's toy syringe that's like so big and bulky it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it's got like a liquid in it that looks like Mr. Freeze himself. It's something like Mr. Freeze would inject himself. It's like this weird like chrome blue, like it's so like fake movie shit, you know, if that makes sense. It's kind of hilarious, but it's this experimental drug that basically will delay his disease. But the side effect is that he can't let his heart rate go up, or the drug causes him to hallucinate. So the movie's like not really about it. It's in the sense that like it's not like Crank, where all of a sudden the whole challenge of the movie is to keep his heart rate low. That's not really what it is. It's just like an angle of the movie, I guess, that's supposed to build tension. But here's the thing about that. It's explained in like a throwaway line, and if I didn't have subtitles on, I think I might have honestly forgotten what the reason was. But the first time that he starts to hallucinate, he calls Viv and it's like, hey, what the hell did you give me? And she's just like, drink vodka. It'll take the edge off. And when she says that, it doesn't really, like I said, it doesn't really make sense what you're seeing. So it's just like, so vodka is like the antidote to this. Like, it's so weird. But the whole point is that I guess he drinks the vodka and relaxes, and it lowers his heart rate. Okay, whatever. I'm on board. But that device is so inconsistent throughout the movie. You know, this is a secret agent. This is someone who fears for his daughter's life and wants to protect his family while also being in this high stakes, interrogating people throughout the entire movie, you know, guns going off all the time. The movie just picks and chooses when it wants to give him this convenience of like, oh, my heart rate's up. And like, there's a scene where he saves his daughter from getting almost sexually harassed in a bathroom, but his heart rate never goes up when he's trying to save his daughter's life, and he's fine. But then it'll happen when he's finally like got the bad guy wounded and they're walking in a train station and he's about to kill him, and all of a sudden the movie wants him to have the issue. There's another shootout sequence in I think it's like a bakery or something, where he gets shot in the chest and all these guns are going off and they're in a public place, and you know, all this bad stuff can happen. He doesn't have the heart rate problem. And it's just so wildly inconsistent, and it actually makes like less sense when they give it to him. They want to give it to him when his heart rate shouldn't be as high as it was in the scene before. And it's kind of ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous in and of itself, but at least the movie could follow its own rules, but it doesn't at all. And plus, like, the idea in general where you're like, hey, be a secret agent, but your heart rate can't go up. Like Amber Heard, just do the fucking mission yourself. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever. There are times in this movie where it wants to be funny. This whole like idea that he wants to, he buys Haley Steinfeld a bike at the beginning of the movie, and throughout the entire movie, he's stuck with this bike, and he can't get her to ride it. Then the bike bell itself becomes this scene transition where like any scene that starts with him carrying the bike or holding the bike, it goes ding ding. And it literally made me fucking cry laughing every time because it's so stupid. It's so dumb. Every scene transition, ding ding, and then it just like cuts away to like the bad guys. It's so damn funny. There's a couple like weird moments too where like he's trying to get his daughter, he's trying to find his daughter in a club, and the bouncer won't let him in, so he just like shoots the bouncer. It's like in a public place, so unnecessary to just shoot the bouncer to go in and get your daughter, when like it was just like a scene where she was like doing something rebellious. She like wasn't kidnapped by the bad guys, if that makes sense. Yeah, she ends up, you know, she's about to get sexually harassed in the bathroom, but he didn't know that. He just thought she was out partying and disobeying her parents, but he shoots the bouncer so that he can get into the club. It's really funny. I'm just speeding through my notes because it's just not worth really spending that much time on. What? There's a lot of weird reverb on the dialogue too. I don't really know what that was about, and just depending on the scene, there's just like reverb. Like they were filming in a cave, but they'd just be like in a random like place. I think the only thing that really works is Haley Steinfeld in this movie, and if I was to kind of like talk about how like what did this movie contribute to anything in terms of cinema, it's no, because even though Haley Steinfeld's like the greatest thing about it, I don't think Haley Steinfeld, she probably doesn't even remember filming this movie. Nobody remembers this as a Haley Steinfeld film. So that would be, if this movie had any other redeeming quality, that would be the thing. At least, hey, it just kind of like pushed Haley Steinfeld along. But this movie doesn't actually do anything for Haley Steinfeld. It doesn't do anything for Connie Nielsen. It doesn't do anything for Kevin Costner, because obviously he couldn't continue down this path. He's filming Yellowstone now. He's not the next Liam Neeson, even though they tried to make it so. The ending of this movie is, it's probably the worst action sequence of the entire movie is the ending. The way that it's edited, but just narratively, because there's like this weird like Spider-Man Homecoming twist that's hilarious, and it's literally just a contrivance to get the two main characters together. It has nothing to do with the fact the scene starts, he's taking Zoe, his daughter, to the prom. And she's going to prom with this French kid that they've been arguing about the entire movie. And it turns out the French kid introduces his parents to Kevin Costner. And then out of nowhere, that guy's dad, this is his very, probably first and only line in the movie. That guy's dad says, "Oh, by the way, let me introduce you to my partner." And I guess he means business partner, but it's the fucking wolf. And it's like, why? It had nothing to do with the mission. He was just taking his daughter to prom, and in a throwaway line, the wolf ends up being the business partner of her date's dad, who's a brand new character to the movie at that final moment. So all of a sudden, we just find ourselves, okay, this is where these two characters meet. It's not because there's any sort of secret agent work whatsoever. And it was literally laughable. But it's basically just in this like big room where there's like a balcony and like an upper level, and there's a shootout from the upper level to the balcony where this high school prom is. And there's a whole bunch of henchmen, and it's just shot so badly, so badly. And the way that it's edited too, because for no reason at all, it's edited and they splice in Haley Steinfeld's going to this other room with her boyfriend to just like make out, I guess. So there's this whole shootout going on, and it's just kind of edited with them going into this other room, and they kiss in there. And that scene is actually nothing. Nothing at all happens other than they just kind of edit this kiss between these two characters as the shootout's going on, and the kiss is like edited alongside the death of the wolf. And it's just so weird. And so unnecessary and so poor. I was dying laughing. It just makes no sense. And he ends up living, and he gets the family and whatever. It ends exactly the way that you think it's going to be, where he finally gets a chance. And yeah, it's ridiculous. And there's even more stuff, but it's not really worth going on about. Especially because I feel like I'm running the risk of just rambling because I'm on camera and uncomfortable and, doing all this for the first time. But anyway, I just, I made a lot of these points on the Film Beef podcast, and I had way more fun doing it. So remembering this film over the past few years, I had fond memories of it, but now I'm just the most annoyed at it because it's so bad. But in a way, I can take solace. Solace? Is that the word I want? Yeah, it is. I can take solace in knowing that this movie means nothing to anybody. And it has the audience that it deserves, which is none. Amber Heard sucks. Haley Steinfeld is still great despite this movie. And I can watch Kevin Costner on Yellowstone and forget that they tried to make this a thing. When you go to, for some reason, I've never seen this movie. I was literally thinking about the movie The November Man, which is like everything 3 Days to Kill is, except for Pierce Brosnan. And for some reason, me and my friend Cody had an inside joke that I was the November Man, because my birthday's in November, and we were just like making fun of this movie. And I was just thinking about that joke, and it means nothing. Just the November Man. It was the Pierce Brosnan attempt at Taken. You know what I mean? So it was the kind of the same thing for him. And I love that I went on IMDb, when it says more like this on 3 Days to Kill's page, it has the November Man on here. And so the fact that IMDb just kind of like read me in that moment is pretty incredible. Wow. Sorry, I got stopped dead in my tracks by this user review on IMDb. Really great movie. Why such low rating? We can't understand why this movie has such a low rating. It's Luc Besson writing and humor at its most entertaining, and Costner, like fine wine, gets better with age. It's just great. No flab. It's kind of like Taken, but with a few home truths, which came later with Taken. Well, Taken came out 5 years before, or 6 years before. If you want a bit of a thriller entertainment of an eating, this does it for us. I just don't agree at all. That's fine. The budget of this movie was $28 million, and it got a worldwide gross of $53 million. Interesting. On Rotten Tomatoes, let's see what it's got here. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 28% on the tomato meter and a 43% audience score. So yeah, that's about right. I think it should be lower. I did log this on Letterboxd. I gave it 1.5 stars, and I literally laughed when I clicked the "I've seen this before" button, because I kind of couldn't believe it. The previous two movies that I watched before 3 Days to Kill were The Witch and The Lighthouse. Steady decline, if I do say so myself. I will be talking about those movies after I review The Northman, which comes out this coming weekend. And yeah, I'm going to figure out how to do some other stuff in terms of like segments and things like that. I would love it if you do decide to watch this movie just for the fuck of it. Please tweet me or DM me and just let me know, hey, watch 3 Days to Kill. I mean, I would just get a kick out of that. I would just think that was so funny. So anyway, I guess I'm going to end it there, you know? I didn't watch, I had IMDb and everything up while I was watching this. So I have no idea if I was in the camera or not, in the center of the frame or not. But that's all right. That'll do it, I think. So what an interesting test run. I'll figure all this out. I'll figure out my segments. I'll figure out my pacing. I'll figure out exactly what I want to do here. So, but yeah, thank you for bearing with me on this little test here. Like I said, if you're listening to the audio version of this, I'm on YouTube now. I don't know what the link is, but just find Rewatch Ryan or go to the link in the description down below, and you will find the video of this. If you're watching this on video, I am Ryan Snelling at Rewatch Ryan. I have a podcast called Watch Diary. You can subscribe to it wherever you listen to your podcasts. And on that I've been doing that podcast for a lot longer than I've been doing this, obviously. So there's a whole bunch of other episodes that you can watch there. This is just the first time I've done a video component, and we're going to figure it out. I'm excited. I'm excited to get this done. Twitter and Instagram at Rewatch Ryan. Of course, Letterboxd. Rewatch Ryan, letterboxd.com/Rewatch Ryan. You can find the links, all that stuff, in any of my socials, really. I'm kind of everywhere at Rewatch Ryan, so yeah, I appreciate it. My last concern is, and it kind of, it might be a little too late to bring this up, but my last concern was the audio. Because normally on a podcast, I record just straight to my, to Ableton, which is what records the audio. But right now I had the video component, and it's OBS. And I can't have my audio input going into two programs at once. So the audio is actually coming from OBS, which is the video program. And it's noisier for some reason. There's something about OBS that adds noise to the audio. So if you can tell, I apologize. I'm trying to figure out what the deal is. I've done things to change it, but if you still hear it, I apologize. I don't really know what else to do at this point. But hopefully I will figure it out. So sorry about the sound quality. If you can tell, not everybody can though, and that's okay. I did 45 minutes. Pretty wild. Thank you again. Like I said, I'll see you on the next one. I believe the next podcast will be reviewing The Northman, and I'll talk a little bit about The Witch and The Lighthouse as well. Maybe something else will come up. But anyway, I'll just stop it here so I can figure out all the tech stuff and get this uploaded. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.